Hey guys! So, today we are going to talk about second chances and what I would have done had I done it all over again. So let's get into it. Now, to keep this relevant and on focus, we are not going to talk about what I would have done when I had my first kiss and all that stuff. We are going to focus on what I've done in my career. And hopefully this will be useful. Don't take what I say now as a definitive rule of anything. I just want to try to relate to you some of the insights that I have received from going down a very specific type of route, and just give you some reflection on how that path worked out for me in the end and how it's working out so far, and maybe you can learn something from it. So, to define some stuff first and foremost. When I first started out, I went to a university here in Gothenburg. I studied software development for, I think it was 2 years or something like that. And then I joined my first company, and that's where I wanted to talk to you. This is where it all starts for us. So the first thing I did was that I started working as an intern at a design firm, basically. And I was working alone first on one of their products, basically. And very quickly they kind of came to the conclusion, or they had the desire to take this project that I was working on, which was based on an application they had since previously, right, and make it into a company. So they joined forces with these two other guys from a university who had their own project. They kind of merged us together, and we became this small little team, or a startup, if you will, of basically two developers and a business person. And I worked there for roughly a year, I think, something like that, until I was contacted by Ticketmaster. And they basically said to me that they were looking for somebody who was very well versed in React and JavaScript and stuff of that nature, and had a junior profile, right? So I talked to them, and it basically ended up with me going there and becoming. At first, I thought I was going to join this like senior junior type of relationship, but I was actually the first hire. So I kind of, for a very long time, I was pretty much on my own as the front end developer. Not, in the company there was tons of experienced, highly skilled people there, but I was in my department the only person, right? And so I worked there for roughly 2 years, and today I am working at another startup, a more mature startup with, I think, 20-something employees, anywho. And today I am working more in a full stack capacity. So these 3 different positions that I've had, I've done some reflecting on this, and it's the reason why I wanted to share this with you, because I came to an insight on how I think that I would have done this had I done it all over again. So this is, as I said, just my personal opinion, but I think that if I did it all over again, I would have skipped going to the small startup. Why? Well, because I was so vastly inexperienced and so unprepared to deal with the sort of chaos that comes at such a small company. Try to think about it this way. The company itself it's not making any money. All the people working there, well, basically apart from me, are owners of the company. I was the only real employee, which means that money is tight. They measured their pocket money and project budget in, say, tens of thousands of euro. And for those of you out there who don't know this, that's not a lot of money for a company. Like that, they had no revenue stream whatsoever. It was like every single day was a struggle to survive, basically, for the company. And this is where, as a junior, I felt that this was a very stressful environment to be in. And it was stressful because you never really got a chance to really settle in and get any type of help, because nobody had any time. Everything was so stressed all the time. It was basically chaos. There were fires burning absolutely everywhere. You had no practices, you had no chance to develop your skills. You just had to like hack things together. And so for some people that's right. It wasn't right for me. And I actually spoke to some of my more senior co-workers at the company, my first company, and the pattern I saw, and I think that's the key thing for me that I took away from this. Had I done it all over again, I would have gone this route. All the seniors that I was working with that really thrived in this more chaotic and more self-responsibility type of environment had already spent several years at a larger company or a mid-sized to large company. Some of them had been working for several years at a large-scale company, and it seemed to be that the trend had for a lot of my coworkers was that when they came out of school, they were recruited by the larger companies who in general had really deep pockets and were in need, like they were willing to train their staff in order to have somebody to produce the code. Because the large company's biggest problem is not necessarily always to have like the most skilled people. It's more about just having enough people to keep up with the demand of code that they are producing. Like they have so many projects and their projects are so big that they simply have a lack of people. At a small startup, that's not so. It's more important that every single person that you have is highly productive and highly skilled, because you can't simply you don't have the same problem. You don't have that much code, but it's important that the code becomes good and that the speed is as high as you can humanly make. In other words, the amount of stuff that you need from each individual at small scale is much higher than the amount of stuff that you need from somebody at the large scale. That seems to be the trend anyway. So you can imagine that as an inexperienced person at that level, at the small startup, it becomes very tricky for you to keep up. So, and I actually found this to be true when I went to Ticketmaster and I started working there. Everything was moving much slower. It was much more methodical. They had very good processes, and they had I think that my personal development during the 2 years that I spent at that large company, you can't even compare it. It was like a completely different world. The experience I accumulated at that larger company was massive in comparison. I think I grew, I won't hype it too much, but it was worlds apart. And then I finally reached that level of experience where I started feeling like I kind of know this. Feels like it's old hat. I don't feel as junior anymore. I don't feel as if like every day is a stressful day. I feel like even with a sharp deadline, I pretty much know what I need to know in order to get the job done. And that's when I started looking for my next place of work. And now I'm back at not as small of a startup, but still a fairly fresh company where things are still not as hectic, but almost as hectic as my first company. And I see everything with completely new eyes now. I don't feel that stress that I felt when I was doing this for the first time. I feel, even though I see all the problems and I see all these issues, all that chaos that we face on a daily basis, all the ad hocing, all of that stuff, it doesn't affect me in a negative way anymore. I know how to deal with it. I feel prepared. I feel... The best way I can describe it is it's very similar to going to war. Well, no, I won't go that far, but let's just use this as a euphemism for what I tried to say. I'm not trying to say that this is the same thing, but just bear with me. Because when I first started working at the startup, it was like going into combat or going into an extremely stressful situation completely unprepared. I had no skills. I didn't know anything. I basically just tried to duck for cover and survive. That's it, every day. It was just survival every single day. Then I went to the large company and I received my boot camp training. I received the sort of training and got a feel for what it feels to be working in a really professional capacity. And when I had done my time and I went into combat again, I felt secure. I felt confident. I felt that, yeah, sure, there's still all these problems and sometimes I get stressed about it, but I was emotionally and I'm experienced enough and I'm emotionally stable enough to deal with it. So, to summarize and to give something back to the juniors out there who might be starting out, don't, like, how do I put this? It may not be the sexiest thing in the world to work for the government or work for a really large company or something like that, but when you're just starting out, I think that it's actually very healthy for you to go through that first. Because in the beginning, you are inexperienced and you need an environment that is sort of stable, at least in my opinion, to really allow yourself the time to get good at what you do before you start doing all the fancy cool things. And as I said, at my first company, everybody else had done that. I hadn't. I was the complete junior. I had skipped the boot camp. I had skipped the first step and gone right into combat, if you will, or into the chaos, into the fray. And all I can tell you is that if I did it all again, that's the thing I would have changed. I'm very happy that I went the way that I did, because going through that, because it was hell, I'm not gonna lie, I was suffering a lot at my first job. More than you can possibly imagine. But I'm glad that I did, because since I survived it and I'm still here, I know that this means this job and this career of mine, I don't care anymore where I end up. I just know that I love it. I love every single day. And after that ordeal, it proved to me that I have what it takes to just stick by my guns and keep on going. So what I'm saying is that if you get a chance, if you are just starting out and you are now thinking about getting your first job, consider taking a year or two at a really large company or a bigger, more established company, even if it's not the sexiest company in the world, because trust me, it will be so much easier for you to go into the trendy startups and do all the cool things once you have your basic training. Have a great day.